Do you or a loved one suffer from not understanding the numbers very well on just how your dreams are not possible in today's economy? Well, do I have a video for you? Buckle your parents up if you're dumb enough to have this video on play while they're sitting next to you. Because they're going to make you pause every minute to kick back some bullshit about blah 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 and you don't work like we used to, or we did this and that, as if stating that means they are somehow better than you. And to my own parents, if you one day listen to or watch this video, I love you, but shut the fuck up. For 1 second. Plus, however many more seconds this video has within it, and just bear with me. And to my mom, no, I wasn't yelling at you. I know what your mind is thinking. I was yelling into the air around you so your ears could hear me more and realize they need to perk up for this informational video in which you yourselves might also learn something very important. What is it you might learn? Well, it's that Millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Zers, or whatever we are calling the Fortnite loving, COD screaming demons these days, are absolutely fucked. Economics wise, of course. We are definitely fucked in more ways, but don't get me started on those other things. Actually, one day I might get started on those other things. But first, ad time. I am so kidding. Does it look like I have the YouTube numbers for ads? Hell no. But I still got your mom's number. And your dad hits me up every Sunday wondering how I am doing. But tell him the cheeks ain't free till this YouTube thing blows up. So if you want to get some money still and put it in my, Cash App or Venmo or just my wallet, when rent comes due, maybe we could talk. And then, once you do that, he might be able to actually give you money when your rent comes due and you can't afford it because you're fucked. When you spend all that money on the new gaming rig or some liquor or illegal items like marijuana. Just kidding. Anyways, I suggest you all fucking subscribe and like this video. And find the most boomer ass person you know and don't share this with them if you don't want to be stuck in a Dormammu style loop explaining why things cost the way they cost. Alright. On to the meat and potatoes of the video, they say. In order to understand the reason for that over-encompassing threat to the hopes and prayers of tired and depressed 40-something and under people everywhere in company with the few above that age range not filled with worms in the brain, we must discuss the glorious CPI. Wait. Okay, don't click away. I promise not to bore you or waste your precious attention span of time. I mean, I kinda will, but for fuck's sake, what were you doing before you clicked on this video? Playing Pokemon fucking Go? Queuing up another game of Apex Legends? Scrolling Zillow for houses you can't fucking afford in the first place? Dreaming and aspirating about shit you see on Instagram? Looking at makeup tutorials by very questionable content creators with very questionable personal views? Maybe you were driving to spend money your ass knows you shouldn't be spending, so spend some time right here and just listen for a moment, because this information is likely more than even your parents know. And you can rub that in their faces, and who doesn't love a good face rub? A good, good old-fashioned face rub that turns into a face shot. I mean, hold on. Okay, so back on topic. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Consumer Price Index, or CPI as we call it, does this, and I quote the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics here, represents changes in prices of all goods and services purchased for consumption by urban households. User fees such as water and sewer services, and sales and excise taxes paid by the consumer are also included. Income taxes and investment items like stocks, bonds, and life insurance are not included. The CPIU includes expenditures by urban wage earners and clerical workers, professional, managerial, and technical workers, the self-employed, short-term workers, the unemployed retirees, and others not in the labor force. The CPIW includes only expediters by those in hourly wage earning or clerical jobs. End quote. Now, hold on. I get it. There was a fucking hell of a word salad. I really get it. But just, hold on. Let me take a sip of water, okay? Because that got me too. I have a weird drinking sound. Anyway, no need for any type of DEA interference here. I'm not drinking anything that's maybe Lil Wayne inspired and will make me sleepy in a few hours or a few minutes. I hope I can finish this video. Anyways, they take all that stuff and mesh it together in a salad of data and use the CPI to, again, according to the US Bureau of Labor, yada fucking yada yada yada, quote, as an economic indicator, as the most widely used measure of inflation, the CPI is an indicator of the effectiveness of government policy. In addition, business executives, labor leaders, and other private citizens use the index as a guide in making economic decisions. As a deflator of other economic series, the CPI and its components are used to adjust other economic series for price change, and to translate these series into inflation-free dollars. As a means for adjusting dollar values, the CPI is often used to adjust consumer income payments, for example, Social Security, to adjust income eligibility levels for government assistance, and to automatically provide cost of living wage adjustments to millions of American workers. The index affects the income of more than 90 million people because of statutory action, over 65 million Social Security beneficiaries, and over 38 million SNAP program recipients, formerly known as food stamps, among other programs, end quote. Holy shit, that was a lot of words. Now that all of that is out of the windpipes and you know what the CPI is, let's dissect that shittle. Shitzel? Shitnel? Do trying to be hip white people in their 40s still say shittle, or was it shitzel? Anyways, I'm gonna break down just a little more, okay? So I can say I cover my bases and use most of the research I did after a horrible edible-inspired dream woke me up at 2 in the morning on a Friday night, and I really couldn't go back to sleep. According to an Investopedia article called History of Living by Greg Daugherty, quote, soon after its creation by Congress in 1884, the Bureau of Labor Statistics started to collect data on American cost of living. In the late 1880s, it recorded how much money 8,544 families were spending each year, along with the current retail prices for 215 commodities. End quote. I wonder why they did this. Quote, the CPI as we know it got its start during World War I when the Shipbuilding Labor Adjustment Board used BLS data to establish a fair wage scale for workers in the U.S. shipyards. Their labor was considered so essential to the war effort that the government didn't want to risk any strikes or work stoppages for higher pay, end quote. The only time the U.S. government does anything is when labor demands it, and boy does labor have some power to get the chains of democracy moving again. So, unionize. Everywhere. Everything. Unionize literally fucking everything. Get to it. Originally, the government boys called it the Cost of Living Index. But in 1945, after we defeated the Blackstreet Boys and their Elder Scrolls boss leader, and the guys who nutshotted the U.S. right into Pearl Harbor, they changed it to the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. Bureaucracies are good with abbreviating their departments, and data sheets, I will give them that, okay? I mean, you've got the FBI, the CIA, the DEA, the NSA. I mean, how many badass names can one guy come up with? To abbreviate all these fascist, these lovely organizations of American liberty and defense. If I disappear, will someone delete my search history and burn the black gym bag in my closet, which contains strangely phallic-shaped objects? But does the CPI catch up to the times fast enough? Well, no. Like all great empires that fail to evolve rapidly enough, slow government bureaucracy quickly overwhelms the system. Gregory notes some of the criticisms of the CPI. Quote, as the BLS itself concedes, the CPI is often for not reflecting the experience of some population groups, end quote, the blacks. Quote, also, the list of items that consumers spend their money on can lag behind what they're actually buying, especially as hot new products come on the market, end quote. And even the BLS comments how the CPI can fail to keep up with individual stats and can also be skewed by the pure vastness of its needed scale. But what does this magical abbreviation have to do with you might say? Well, it's the baseline for what minimum wage workers make, in most cases at least, and therefore where all wages start and expand onwards. But does it work? I mean, no. Hell, it doesn't even work for the wage worker, the minimum wage worker. Gregory states, quote, workers who earn the minimum wage have been particularly disadvantaged. Some states tie their minimum wage to the CPI, while others leave it to their legislators to decide when increases are merited. The federal government takes the latter approach, and raising the minimum wage is a contentious political issue. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 an hour since 2009. In essence, end quote, the feds aren't doing their job despite having all their data at their fingertips. But we know this because the feds have found a way to be held unaccountable, while the local elections are some of the most important you can participate in, whether it's expanding access to legalized marijuana, protection of abortion rights, proper city design, school support, proper support for public transit, and even if your water doesn't get contaminated or that bridge on a country road receives proper care from your state DOT department. Local elections matter. So how much of a difference does this ineffective approach make? That same article states in 2022, quote, to the most recently available data, the federal minimum wage of $7.25 was worth 18% less than when it was last raised in 2009. After adjusting for the cost of living, in 1968, the average minimum wage worker earned $10.59 per hour in inflation-adjusted terms, which is 40% more than minimum wage workers earn today. The minimum wage today would be over $22 per hour had it tracked productivity increases over the last 5 decades, end quote, according to the Economic Policy Institute. $22 fucking dollars per hour for minimum wage had it tracked inflation? Fuck me, we're getting stiffed. And while Gregory notes that this means low-end workers have a lot to complain about, imagine the difference this has allowed your employer to stiff you if you aren't a minimum wage worker. Could you be making a median position of, say, $70K and it's really actually $100K? It should be, but your CEO and those executives or the business owner who you see maybe once a month has certainly seen an increase. And what makes it stranger is that boomers and the like constantly challenge the arguments of Gen Z and millennials, is that they have only recently seen major increases to ensure they can keep their cost of living, and even then it might not be enough. Gregory notes, quote, Social Security and supplementary security income recipients received a cost of living adjustment of 3.2% for 2024. That follows an 8.7% increase in 2023. The highest increase in 40 years, reflecting the spike in consumer prices, end quote. They just made these adjustments. They haven't been making these major adjustments along with inflation for 40 years. So these boomers have been struggling, and yet for some reason they're still saying millennials and Gen Z don't want to work and are just lazy. That's why they can't afford things. I mean, tell me you have worms on the fucking brain without telling me you have worms on the brain. So with these wages, are we truly more productive? I mean, surely if we aren't paid as well, we aren't working well, right? Yeah, bump that. Look at this chart. I mean, look at it. Just look at the fucking chart. I'm gonna wait. Use your eyes and look at the chart. Unless you're driving, in which case, if you're driving, you are a demonic asshole, and I demand that you come back to this point and look at this fucking chart when you are no longer driving. I summoned 3 individuals whom I don't have photos of, so enjoy this photo of 3 people staring into the darkness. Wait. Holy shit, I am going blind. I swear for 28 years, I had the best vision of the whole family. And now I can't tell a day-lit window to a nighttime lit window. Now I gotta get expensive fucking glasses. I wonder if I can get some of those big round Harry Potter peepers, you know? And walk around telling people to expel these nuts after I kick them, you know? Or maybe I can say, I solemnly swear I will smack the shit out of you. Oh shit, wait, I was doing a video. Let's see, where was I? Penis, no wait. My OnlyFans, no. CPI, yes. Wage stagnaciones, hombres. Again, I referred to the earlier chart. Charts! Just look at the chart! So what does this chart from Economic Policy Institute mean? As its 3 authors researched, and I quote, the figure shows that in the 3 decades following World War II, hourly compensation of the vast majority of workers rose 91%, roughly in line with productivity growth of 97% from 1973 to 2013. Hourly compensation of a typical production / non-supervisory worker rose just 9%. While productivity increased 74%. The breakdown of pay growth has been especially evident in the last decade, affecting both college and non-college educated workers, as well as blue and white collar workers, end quote. So either, you become the asshole manager that doesn't have sex, is on their second marriage, and sips coffee all day because they gotta get themselves jacked up on, a bunch of caffeine. Otherwise, they would find their own bullshit that they spiel repetitive and tiring, and they would just go into a corner and video game themselves. Or you are the worker doing all the work like a fucking drone and only able to afford 1 cup of Dunkin' coffee. Well, you could sacrifice your left and right testy and purchase 2 cups of Starbucks coffee, but to be honest, I would only pay the cost of Starbucks coffee for a cup of coffee if I was getting it from one of those countries that serves it in a tiny cup, because anything over a shot would spawn you in the depths of hell. When you drink those, do you know the ones I'm talking about? And do you want to go to hell? Right? Not really. Actually, hell with Elmo sounds pretty fire. Get it? Get it? Okay. The rich have to be suffering as well from this all, right? I mean, Reaganomics, right? Trickle down bullshit. If we're suffering, they gotta be suffering too. I mean, they have to be hurting, right? Right? Shit. The window watching 3 writers states, quote, in 2013, inflation-adjusted hourly wages of young college graduates were lower than they were in the late 1900s, a trend that held for both young, male and female college graduates. Thus, wage stagnation and erosion afflict even the 1/3 of workers who have earned a 4-year college degree, end quote. So odds are, your degree don't mean shit, with a dash of shit, with a dash of semen, and after you get that degree, then try your best to get a job, and finally, after joining the fellowship and defeating fucking Sauron, you get an entry-level job in your field, if you're lucky. Guess what? Do those benefits help you out? The same writers state, quote, recent college graduates have been less and less able to find jobs that provide health insurance. The share of young college graduates who have employer-sponsored health insurance coverage fell from 61% in 1989 to 31% by 2012, end quote. So essentially, you're not getting anything from the job that you do get, even fucking benefits. Get fucked. Am I right? Alright, now let's get to the final boss. The cost of dying. Living. Cost of living. The cost of living, not dying. Here is where the rubber meets the road. Where you start questioning if you should just come off your antidepressants and let life do its work. Where society reminds you of the draw of 4 cards it's thrown in front of you every single time you've walked outside. Where you question if you too could be an OnlyFans content creator. Where you think about committing seppuku by ordering $500 worth of Taco Bell and seeing if your stomach is in agreement on calling it just quits. Where you too decide to eat the McDonald's fry that has made the space between your seat and your car home and hasn't paid rent for the past 4 years, but it still looks fresh as if it's straight out of the fryer. Where you... Okay, where the fuck was I? I think my attention span is broken. So is America's. So let's just look at the past 2 years. After all, we all remember the pandemic, right? It's fresh enough, though stale in the American consciousness at this point, but our attention spans are so short that 2 years is about the distance of time most Americans can bring up any issue. For example, what the hell do you remember about Obama? Do you remember a damn thing about Bush? Besides 9/11 and pleasing Daddy Bush? Getting away from politics, do you even remember using the iPhone 9 or say what song was at the top of the charts in, say, 2019? No? Alright then. CNBC, take it the fuck away. According to Mike Winters and Gabriel Cortez at CNBC, quote, in that time, the cost of essentials like groceries and utilities and gas increased by 20% or more. The cost of all items on the index increased by 13% in that time, end quote. Now, cost of groceries is up by almost 20%, right? Yeah, remember eggs suddenly costing $6 for like a 6-pack or a 12 or 10-pack? Almost overnight, or even the cheap bread going from like $1.15 to like $2.30 overnight. For reference, I'm in North Carolina. And don't get me started on shit like meat. I mean, dick meat hasn't increased in cost compared to the meat of some chicken, but, you know, dick meat is always free. Just be willing to have sex and you'll get dick for free. Anyways, now, yes, things like the war in Ukraine and avian flu and chickens and other factors like work shortages play into these things, but the costs haven't gone down despite adjustments being made in those matters from these massive price hikes, have they? Remember the gas lines of the pandemic with the gas pipe issue on the East Coast? Sure, prices have dropped from that crisis, but by how much? Well, not much or not at all. That same CNBC article notes, quote, regular gas prices, $3.66 per gallon, well below its June 2021 peak when a gallon costs more than $5. The cost of gas is up 22% compared with 2 years ago. Car buyers have been affected by a supply crunch too. Car manufacturers cut production early in the pandemic and have struggled to meet demand since. A semiconductor shortage also drove up prices for new cars, which are 19% higher than in 2021. On top of that, a car part and labor shortage led to increased prices for vehicle maintenance and repair, end quote. Maybe you just want to stay at home. Maybe you just don't want to spend money. And you want to join me and my fellow introverts in eternal bliss without having to deal with the sweats and smells of other assholes out in the public. Avoid sweating yourself and maybe holding your arms together so your friends can't tell that you have sweat stains and that your pity is disgusting. Question your quality of hygiene, whether you own deodorant. Seriously, people, deodorant is so necessary. The amount of times I go out in public and smell other people is getting on my nerves. Well, guess what? That shit costs more too. Listen to this shit and just bear with me on how fucked you are according to CNBC. Quote, the cost of utilities has surged since 2021 as a shortage of natural gas and coal drive up prices for electricity and gas piped into homes. Electricity and piped gas are up 21% and 26% respectively. Home renovations are also more expensive compared with 2 years ago, as pandemic related labor and supply shortages increased prices for hardware and tools. Likewise, elevated material costs, low inventory, and supply chain snarls have led to increased prices for furniture. However, shipping times have improved and prices have been flat over the past few months for those. Prices for furniture and bedding are still 16% higher than they were 2 years ago. Rent is measured differently by the CPI compared with information published by real estate companies, resulting in a lag in the way the data reflects rent price growth. However, as any renters that renewed their release recently knows, rent has surged by about 20% in the last 2 years, according to rent.com data, end quote. And that doesn't include shit like all the streaming services you have to pay for just to watch a show that will be canceled in 2 or 3 seasons and be so fucking incomplete and leave you emotionally devastated. That's 2 years. 2 years of data I just told you. Recent 2 years. 2 years you're currently living. What about several decades of cost of living? Janet Nguyen wrote in August of 2022, Money and Millennials, the cost of living in 2022 versus 1972. Several important comparison numbers and comments you can combine with everything I have said before and slap your boomer parents with when they say back in my day as if they survived the Black Plague and fought in the Civil War all before the fucking age of 10. Where are you living? At home? You damn sure are not alone. Young adults, quote, many burdened by financial struggles are now living with their folks at a higher rate than people of their age did 50 years ago. The proportion of young adults who live in parents' homes more than doubled between 1971 and 2021, from 8% to 17%, according to a recent Pew Research report. End quote. Wonder why? Maybe because the cost of a home in 1972 on average was $189,500, while its 22 average was $440,000, according to Janet. Now, you might be thinking that $189,000 is still pretty high, but you're not realizing that's adjusted for inflation. So get ready, buckle the fuck up, prepare to get angry. Janet goes on to say, quote, the median price of a home in the second quarter of 1972 was just $26,800, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, amounting to roughly $189,500 in current dollars. Since then, home prices have climbed 132%. That's just the national median. In some parts of the country, sales prices are even higher. The median sales price of a home in Los Angeles metropolitan area was $918,000 in June, while San Jose was $1.46 million. Seattle sales prices were about $726,600, according to data from Zillow, end quote. See the fuckery in the difference? I mean, $26,800 for a fucking home? Adjusted for inflation, only $189,000? Okay, say you can't afford a home. Just rent an apartment for a decade, right? And save up. Janet goes on to say, quote, when housing becomes too expensive, people rent for longer periods, which in turn drives up rent for everyone, explained Diane Yentl, the president and CEO of the National Low Income Housing Coalition. The average monthly rent reached more than $2,000 in June, according to Redfin, end quote. $2,000 fucking dollars? That's a fucking mortgage. And a lot of these places that make you pay rent, like these apartment complexes and shit, obviously, or even fucking hell, renting a home. That doesn't include your fucking utilities in a lot of these places. That doesn't include your fucking internet. That doesn't include all the other bullshit associated with fucking owning a residence of any kind. Okay? And $2,000, you can make that payment somehow by the fucking grace of fucking sacrificing all your goddamn limbs to the fucking elder gods. But you can't even get approved for one at the bank. You know, a loan for a fucking house. Despite paying a fucking monthly mortgage in a rent fee. Because the house you're trying to buy is, oh, say, $400K and the bank wants like $70K put down, but your pay doesn't equal your work output or keep up with the cost of living, so your savings is nowhere near where it needs to be, even if it existed fucking all. But fuck me, back in the day, cigs were smoked in the pregnancy ward. Women knew their place and had sandwiches and fucking martinis prepared when the husband came home. And fucking every man worth his grain and salt walked outside in a fucking suit to go get a job at a fucking dockyard or a coal factory and sucked his boss's dick till he finally grew some balls of his own and joined a goddamn union. But hey, it's just you aren't educated. Even though we've shown that regardless of your education, you're still getting fucked. Let's just peruse that. Janet, why don't you ruin my brain some more, will ya? Quote, 1971 to 1972, $10,000 for a public 4-year college. $20,700 for a private non-profit 4-year college versus 2021 to 2022 numbers of $24,600 for a public 4-year college and $56,100 for a private non-profit 4-year college, end quote. Remember that these numbers are adjusted for inflation. In other words, that $10K for public is probably more like $3,000 back then. And this shit affects your life for the rest of your fucking life. Rarely does it ever improve it even close to what you were told it would do in your childhood. Quote, the cost of college tuition fees, room, and board has more than doubled since the 1971-1972 school year after adjusting for inflation. According to data from the College Board, climbing costs have saddled millions with student debt that they struggle to pay off after graduating from college, forcing many to postpone or abandon their hopes of purchasing a home or starting a family, end quote. According to Janet, obviously. And don't get me started on the interest these loans can accrue in just 10 years, even if you are making your payments on fucking time. Just in borrowed amounts before interest, Americans have borrowed $1.75 trillion in student debt, starting at $400 billion since the Federal Reserve started tracking these numbers in just 2006. Now, college is just 4 years of your life, right? Maybe 8 if you're going for a doctorate or a master's. Hell, maybe even 10. Who knows? But you know what's something that follows you all the way through fucking life? Medical expenses. Medical, mother-loving expenses. If I go through this with my normal cut through, I'm going to just completely rip a new one into my own brain with a frag. So I'm just gonna quote Janet bar for fucking bar here, like Drake does his ghostwriters. Quote, a recent Gallup poll found that rising healthcare costs have led about 40% of Americans to skip treatments, reduce regular household expenses, or borrow money. People paid an average of more than $129 for out-of-pocket healthcare expenditures in 1972, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. That is the equivalent to $915 today. In 2020, the latest year for which data is available, people paid $400 more in out-of-pocket costs, totaling $1,350 after adjusting to 2022 dollars. Out-of-pocket costs make up a smaller share of the nation's total health expenditures since the 1970s. according to KFF. That's because insurance programs cover more costs, explained Cynthia Cox, vice president at KFF. For example, Medicare did not cover outpatient prescription drugs until 2006 per capita. However, out-of-pocket costs have risen. That's a reflection of the fact that healthcare prices and healthcare costs are growing faster than the rest of the economy. End quote. Cox said, quote, I don't know why I end quoted, but fuck it, we're moving on. Okay, I made it, and my limbs are still attached, right? But I'm slowly going blind. My asthma sucks even more than when I was a kid. My antidepressants depress me with the costs associated with them. My teeth low-key annoy me, but a root canal costs like 1K out of pocket, and I am extremely fearful of the impact of falling on my ass can have on my wallet in an ER room. So I will walk away from this before I rage even fucking more. I know lots of people who don't have cars my age. I'm 28 for reference. Even more whom are in their early 20s who don't, let alone even a license. But why? I mean, this is America. We got, more highways than we got fucking beers. We built roads that run from coast to mother-loving fucking coast, okay? A dick in New York could buy a cup of coffee in New York and drive to fucking Burbank and go surfing within a week using our highways. Yeah, suck it, Lewis and fucking Clark. We've got Ford Mustangs, Dodge Chargers, F-250s, Chevy Suburbans, Caddies, big-ass fucking 18-wheelers spewing death and devastation thanks to overworked, underpaid, and not involved in their own regulation truck drivers, moving freight from here to fucking Kalamazoo across the country. This is fucking America, and you will hit our potholes and get hit while walking in this country because it is your obligatory duty as a fucking citizen, okay? Fuck mass transit, bitch. Have you tried crossing a downtown street in America lately? It's a piss-laden ass-clenching excitement that even getting high can't beat. But why? Because the American car is absolutely necessary. It's the only one to maximize one's opportunities in life. How much is it gonna cost you? Just to buy the bitch, Janet, my sweet. Let's get to the numbers. Quote, 1972, $26,100 versus 2022, $48,200. End quote. Janet, why do you want me to rid myself of living so much? Once again, we are adjusting these numbers for inflation, so give me the juice. What did my grandma pay for in the year of my mother's birth in numbers for a car? Quote, but the average price of a new car in 1972 stood at $3,690, according to the National Automobile Dealers Association, which amounts to about $26,100 in current bills. Since then, the price has risen about 85%, end quote. Holy shit. Fucking absolute shit. Motherfuck shit. But wait, I'll get something affordable. Something from Japan or something. Quote, the manufacturer's suggested retail price of a two-door Corolla sedan was more than $2,100 back in 1972, equivalent to more than $14,900 today. The Corolla L sedan, the line's base model, has a current starting MSRP of more than $20,400, about $5,500 over what it used to cost back then. End quote. In other words, you can't get a shitty car and mod it up to something quick because it still costs more. But back in my day, we fucking changed our oil every fucking week and cranked up the goddamn headlights with our hand before we started driving so the fucking lantern would fucking work. I mean, get the fuck out of here. Now, I didn't get to any social differences or mental differences or the overall world understanding of things between generations. And I'm already wondering, if maybe putting our parents in homes as quickly as possible is not actually a bad thing. You know, nursing homes, hospice care, or just taking them out back like, no, Pa, it's my dog. I'll do it. I don't think it was Pa. Was it Pa or was it Ma? Fuck me. Anyways, I'm just kidding, obviously, but these numbers are extremely concerning because it shows that Gen Z and millennials are growing up and coming to adulthood in a world which truly and utterly is disconnected with us, and our needs don't meet reality. Then telling us to go and cry about it in a corner and just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, dick straps. Wait, no. Which one is it? Stick straps. No, it's bootstraps. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Sorry about that. Where and how are we supposed to do that? Ask them, and once they give you advice or instructions, tell them while back in their day that might have worked. In our day, my ass is still too red from the last decade screwing and trying to prepare for this decade screwing that's already happening that I can't even begin to put your advice into play because it was only relevant when you were busy living in a 2-bedroom apartment for $800 and driving a car that cost you only in total maybe 2/4 of a year's salary to pay for in full. And since so many of us are getting degrees or at bare minimum being the first in our families to go to college, we are smarter than them and they should shut the hell up and come to understand where we are coming from and accept that they had their moment in the sun. And while it's essentially not possible to save us now, really, it is possible to save future generations from having a fat banker cat asshole in their wallet, or the useless Fed from not doing its job in the future. Anyways, I'm gonna go play some Fallout and watch TikToks about dogs and ghost stories in order to cleanse my palate for a few days. I appreciate you guys listening in on this video, and I hope you learned something from it. And don't forget the fucking charts. I know some of you forgot the fucking chart. I know some of you were listening to this while driving and have not seen the fucking charts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.